Gentleman in the back. What's your name, sir?
Adam Atherton.
Adam Atherton.
So I've been reading this Farragut-funded national community survey, which I thought was really well done. It asked great questions. Some of it is no surprise, but some of it is quite concerning too. So Alex mentioned it. In there, it's clear that the folks that responded, in the vast majority, said they weren't happy with the commercial planning and the residential planning. So clearly there's a planning issue. So what I'd like to hear is, what are some of the ideas for improving the interface with the community so that we can improve these schools?
Alex, will you answer that first?
Kind of like I said, the big thing is get in the office and then set up actually a citizen advisory committee is one of the ideas I've had, where we can actually bring in members of the different committees we have and some citizens, and then those people can go back out and work with the HOAs, you know, and get we need a lot more feedback, I think, for the people, not just a survey once every few years or whatever. I think on a quarterly basis we need to have this committee or this group come in and report to us and say, hey, we met with, you know, neighborhood X, Y, and Z, and here's what their issues were this quarter, and so on. And again, just like Louise said, I think the last couple of years with social media, communication's gotten worse. And ironically, I don't know if Mayor Williams knew about this, but our communication director sent us aldermen an email today, and I got a notification that there was something in my quarantine file, and I went and looked at it, and it was her email that she sent to all of us at the town. Somehow it got dumped into quarantine. So there's little hiccups like that when it comes to social media and email and so on. I think using the newspaper, like Louise said, using signage. If you drive in other parts of Knox County, you'll see where Knox County and even the city of Knoxville, they put signs out when there's going to be discussion for zoning and so on. Yeah, but it's, you know, there's a lot of different things where if there's going to be any kind of a change or whatever, but really communication to me, it comes down to getting out and talking to people. You know, I like Alderman LaCroix's idea of how he holds a meeting and it's open to the public and so on. I'd like to do it not just the day before our board meetings, but you know, once a month or once every week, you know, a couple weeks or so on, and have, if it's noticed properly, it doesn't have to be just one person from the board. Maybe there could be a North Ward alderman and a South Ward alderman there, so they can hear from people from both sides of, you know, both sides of the city.
I will say, there were some stuff in there that community survey was it's supposed to be a check-in, and we're going to continue to do that, to check in. It wasn't all bad though. We had 9 in 10 residents, more than 9 in 10 residents like the quality of life here. They plan to stay here more than 5 years. They would recommend this community to other people to move to. So we have a desirable community, but the things that they were struggling with was, and it was right after the ATMS we were finally getting that right. So traffic, when we were going through that, you all know, that was just misery. It was just it was horrible waiting to figure this out. But I think it flows pretty well. They're putting AI in right now, so but then you got to teach that.
Yep.
So that's a learning lesson, trying to figure out how the traffic patterns change throughout the day. And then of course, if there's an accident or getting out of school or there's a school event. So there's opportunities to address that. The commercial planning and the residential planning. I think one of the issues is it happened so fast. We had so much come so fast after COVID. Everybody moved here, and they started building, and we saw commercial development, we saw residential development, and our land use plan calls for a mix of development. We were looking for a mix of townhomes and multifamily and senior living, and I think we've checked that box. And that's one of the reasons why we're updating this comprehensive land use plan, which I know everybody hears that and says, what the heck is that? When we're asking, and I don't know how you make it sound better, Come, tell us, because people, most of the property that's undeveloped in this community is already zoned for something. It's not, I think a lot of people thought that the little property was agricultural because it was just an open field. The Ford property is not agricultural, it's commercial, office, and residential. So we have to work within those constraints of what can we do, what can we afford to do, because I agree with you that we need to look for some open space opportunities in the Ford property. But the residents, we, as a community, we need to understand what we can and can't do. Because we are, beholden to the Constitution. People have property rights, and how are we shaping what we have left, but making sure that we're not stepping on property rights as well. So that's it, it's a very fine line. But I see there's a lot of potential there. Traffic is always going to be something we struggle with, and we try to work through. It has always been a
Until we have
struggle.
flying cars.
Yes. Or they widen our interstate, which, so.
Another question. Yes, ma'am, in the back. What's your name?
Gigi Love. I would like both candidates to describe your experience in small town government, development, like maybe taking classes, education, development, expertise, planning commissions, if you've been on any of those, grant writing, how we've gone around the country, kind of looked at other, communities. I haven't lived here very long, but I moved here because of what you guys have, and I'm, and so, also, experience with law, like you have to be familiar with the local law, the county laws, the city laws, the state and fed laws. If you can kind of address your experience in those areas, because I don't really know who one of them.
I've been on the planning commission since 2013. When I became elected official, state law requires that the mayor for cities, we're talking about laws, cities are run a little differently than counties. And so we have different laws that we kind of have, hoops we have to jump through. For our charter, which is in state law, we're required to have a mayor and one of the elected officials appointed by the body to serve on the planning commission. I think that's actually good because with elected officials on the planning commission, you now have representation on the planning commission, which, as I got an education, your Glen Abbey, that's an example. Fox Den had an issue, I could understand it because of all my experience just following zoning and understanding all of that. County, we don't really run into county laws, but we do run into state laws. I don't think people realize we exist because the state allows us to exist. If the state, and I'll give you an example, 5G came in through. The year before the state passed their law in 2018, 2017, we passed a comprehensive new rule for 5G poles. And we aligned it with Supreme Court rulings and the established law at the time. And we were able to put 5G poles, you had to put them in commercial first, and then office, and it went down. Residential was the last. Well, a year later, the state came and they basically obliterated our law. They could take precedence over our law, and we could no longer enforce that law. And that's when 5G was coming in. They were trying to get into the neighborhoods because I don't know what they were doing. I think they abandoned that plan. But it was very dramatic, and it was very upsetting, and we couldn't protect our neighborhoods. They were upset with us, and we were upset with the state because we were like, you kind of tied our hands. The state can preempt any law that we have in place, and that can be very frustrating. That January to April is always a very tense time because you don't know what they're going to pass. You really don't, and sometimes you think. We don't know what we're going to do. Yes. And sometimes they pass something, and you're like, "What do you? This might work for some rural county, but it's not working for the suburban community." Then you got to go race to you better have a good relationship with not just your legislator, but all of the Knox County. Call them up. Hey, we need you. Find out if they're on the committees. Write them emails. It can be very daunting at those times. So it's very important to understand where we stand and who our state representatives are. And two of them are in this room, and we're like, yay.
Maybe a third.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer you, so I would, like I said, I was elected in 2024. This is the first elected office that I've held. This is the first race that I ran in. Previously, I volunteered time. I volunteered time at the high school with the high school football team, and so that I do a lot of community involvement that way. And my role after I was elected, spent time in, I guess it was January of 25 at the MTAS convention that is held in Nashville. I went with Mayor Williams the first year and sat in a lot of good classes. They have a lot of online training that's available to elected officials and so on. So I've been doing a lot of that in the free time. You have a lot of access to that. I do a lot of internet reading, obviously, when it comes to municipal law. Like Louise said, our ordinances are obviously different than Knox County that Angela deals with. If I have a question, I can pick up the phone and call her, or just like we talked about with Senator Briggs or Jason Zachary. Spent a lot of time when we were there in Nashville again this year, meeting with all of them. Had a great day, going office to office and talking to each one of them and finding out what they're up to and what they're planning and what's happening and what are they trying to stop and what are they trying to build and so on. It's a continual learning process. It really is, because as you know, yesterday, how many laws went into effect yesterday just in the state of Tennessee from this last legislative session? If you started reading them yesterday, you probably couldn't finish them today. So it's a continuously learning process. I sit on the tourism committee here in town, and I was on the education committee, but we're going to move Alderman Burnett over to the education committee. He's got kids in the school system, and I do not. I worked as a school resource officer for Knox County, and my background is in, I have 2 degrees in criminal justice and forensic science. So when you talk about like criminal law and so on, that's ingrained in my head. But the municipal laws is something that's a constant learning process.
Another question? Yes, sir. What's your name?
My name is Andrew Ingram. I moved here like 4 years ago, because I love Farragut. It's a pretty awesome place. I own 2 businesses here now, and I wanted to ask the candidates, I hear it over and over again, just from customers throughout the area, that it's hard to start a small business in Farragut, and I do hear it complaint over and over again that there's a lot of corporate businesses and not enough fruition cafes. And I don't know if that's on purpose or how that goes about, but I would love to hear if you think that's a problem, and if so, how would you go about making it easier on small businesses to start here that are not the monsters that are going in over, and I say monsters size, not technically, just big businesses going into little farms.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. As a small business owner, that's been something that I've been passionate about, and that's a hard nut to crack. When I walked in 2016, when I walked my neighborhoods, that's the one thing I heard. We want more mom and pop. We want more, and quite frankly, people like you are the heart and soul of our town. The small businesses, Candace is another example. She owns Water into Wine, and I don't think the woman sleeps. She dedicates so much of her time to Farragut, loves her business. It gives her the avenue to do the things that she was president of Rotary, she's the FBA, she's everywhere, doing everything. I believe that we need a small business or business liaison. I think we need a small business liaison. When someone comes into, when you pull up the business in the town of Farragut, you go to their website and you pull up business, you click on it, there's no point of contact there. There's no phone number. And I'm thinking, if we want to attract small businesses, which we value and we say it, we need to show it. When a small business comes in, you know your business. You knew your business, you had your numbers all. You may not understand how to do a build out. And you're afraid to ask the regulatory arm questions. It's like asking a police officer a question when they pull you over. You're like just doing what they tell you to do so that you don't create any fuss. We need somebody, if it's a position or if it's somebody, an existing position in the town who is there designated to work with them if they have questions, hey, here's your process. You had problems with your sign. You had questions about that sign. Staff couldn't answer some of the questions you had. There should be answers. You need a liaison that can define that, can understand that, can answer your questions, and if there's frustrations or hiccups, and these hiccups are similar for different business owners, that there's something to go in and fix and make better. I think we have we have the Shop Farragut, we have Visit Farragut, and we have Chamber of Commerce. And right now they work in silos.
Yep.
To a certain extent, they work in silos. A person, a collaborator, that not necessarily telling them what to do, but getting them to be together and maybe move in the same direction is an opportunity. We need these are assets that a small business might come in and say, they're looking at either Lenore City or Farragut, and they see, hey, I got a business liaison that's gonna help me through. I've got these 3 great assets to help me with my business, to get it marketed, get the noise out, and get some support here. Those are assets that we need to take better advantage of that we don't. We need to update our MOUs, memorandums of understanding with Farragut Business Alliance and the Chamber. Farragut Business Alliance has new leadership. Steve did a great job. She's going to take it in a different direction. We might want to look at what that MOU looks like to redefine that. What kind of support do they need? Could someone on staff be getting some of the data that is needed to know? They have great programs, and we hear that they're successful. But is success measured only by how many people show up? How successful is it for the small businesses that buy a booth there? Are they getting traffic coming into their door from being recognized at that business? That's important. That's the reason those events were actually established, was for businesses to have some more visibility in the marketplace. So I'm looking at this. We have so many opportunities, and that we're not capitalizing on.
So after I got elected, we had a small business owner, somebody wanted to come in, came in front of the board and asked some questions and was having some issues. And I was told at this time, and you may know if it's even out there, I was told that Mark Shipley's department had a book at one time that had checklists that you could hand off to a developer or a business, somebody who's coming.
Yeah.
And as long as they walked through that page by page, they did everything the way the book had written, and they had somebody to talk to in the department and so on, it should be smooth sailing. I've asked for that book for almost 2 years now. Nobody can find me even a copy of it or even a digital copy of it. So I think we need to get down as a department and find that, or if they lost it, let's develop a new one and give them a step-by-step guide.
Yep.
As if you're gonna come in and you wanna build, like you said, you wanna build a grocery store, you wanna build a bicycle shop, here's the process to do it, here's the person you can work with, and here's the step-by-step instructions on how to do it. And then be a little, I don't wanna say flexible, and don't just throw out, like the sign ordinance issue or so on, but be able to work with somebody and make sure that the aesthetic of what you're trying to design fits with the original design and the property and what the town asked for. And be able, you gotta have some flexibility. But the big thing now, we just brought on a staff member to help when it comes to reviewing plans and so on. That's going to speed up that part of the process to get those site plans reviewed and then back into the planning commission and the staff members and so on. But there's got to be some kind of a guide that we can help you with. In a previous life, in one of the jobs I was doing with General Motors right out of high school, we were in assembly plants and we were using, literally a checklist, and it had to be pencil. You had to do it in pencil every day. And if you went through the steps every day, everything worked out perfect. So I think we just got to get back to basics and be able to communicate again.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a question about.
Could you state your name?
Oh, yeah, I'm Angel Ray. I have a question about property taxes. I think you're both stated that you're against property taxes, but my question is, what about a bond measure? How does that work? Are you gonna do it? is there a referendum? Did you vote on that? Or is that just up to the government in Farragut to pass a bond on us?
So you stated earlier that you were no property taxes like I have.
Yeah.
Not at all. There should never be a reason. That was the reason my parents came here. That's the reason why I came here. I think if we raise our hands, everybody would. When it comes to bonds, I think if any board ever approached that, in my opinion, I would say it would have to go to a referendum, just like we talked about for a property tax. That should not be a decision that 5 people make, in my opinion, here in this town. I think we have a great group of people. We could hold plenty of meetings like this, but I think it would have to be a referendum. But for me, I don't see we should ever even approach that either.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I've been, when I came in, we had, and I wrote this down because it's kind of important to me. The fund balance when I came in July 2016 was $11.1 million. When I left, it was $32.7 million. I don't like that. If we can't afford it, pay as we go, we shouldn't be doing it. We are in a position where we have no debt. The last time we took on debt was when we bought the candlestick and we bought it in 3 installments. So they spread the payment out. We did take on, when we were early on, we wouldn't have our parks without debt. But we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together at that point. So in recent years, we have built up enough in our fund balance. I think that we can pay as we go, and if we can't, we save up for it. That's what we did with McPhee Park. I know it's a balance of needs and wants. I did not support taking on McPhee Park at the big chunk that we did because I like to. That was a lot of money, and it was actually more money than any of the road projects that we had done. But no, I'm not a fan of that.
Yes, ma'am. You state your name?
Yes, Pam Stevens has a question for both of you. Your time in service in office here in the town of Farragut, what do you consider your 3 greatest accomplishments since you've been in office?
I was very proud of the work I did on Union Road. Union Road was supposed to be another Everett Road. The TDOT had just, and it came in 2016, so I was just elected, and we got this funding. Yay, we got funding! But we're gonna put 40-mile-per-hour design speed, 12-foot lanes, and bike lanes, and I'm thinking, this is gonna look horrible on Union Road. The Union Road residents don't want it, the Fox Run residents don't want it, Saddle Ridge, but at the time, 12-foot lanes and 40-mile-per-hour design speed, it was the Mac Daddy of design, that was the gold standard. And I went back to the engineers twice and they tried to sell me on this idea that there's forgiveness and this is how we do roads, and no. So luckily, TDOT has started working through these multimodal design standards, which brings into the idea of, okay, we need a safe place for cars, but if you're putting sidewalks and trails in, we need a safe place for pedestrians, and we need to make the road safe. So 40-mile-per-hour design speed, 12-foot lanes that are just overly fast, it isn't going to be good when you have pedestrians in the way. That was a bigger fight than it probably should have been for me. I had to get the community involved. Scott, I got so tired. I asked Scott, I said, I need emails. I've got it this far, and I've got to get the board to vote to at least just ask for the design exception. He got 90 people to send emails. We don't want this big, they agreed to do the design, to ask for it, we got it. And now Union Road is, I still don't like it. I think we both wanted 10-foot lanes. But that started this process. We just went through, and instead of doing one size fits all, we've looked at each one of our roads to try to protect the character of that road by putting what needs to be there, and not anymore. We don't need curb and gutter on Evans Road. We don't need curb and gutter on these, like Boyd Station where it's rural, where we want to hold on to that rural feel. That's value. We want to hold on to that. We don't need to curb and gutter everything and call that a success. So I think that was big. The other one was getting in that land use plan and getting the residents in. I started bugging Mark Shipley in 2017. We need to open up this land use plan. It's too dense. It was very dense. We had a lot of multifamily. We had a lot of townhomes, and I just was looking at what was going on around us and concerned about that. So we decided to do corridor studies. When you do a corridor study, people come out. When you say, hey, we're gonna look at Watt Road, people from Sedgefield, people from Orchid Grove, people that live on the road all came out, and they were writing on maps, they were putting numbers up. They gave us their information, they gave us data, they crunched the data, we adopted those changes. They wanted it a certain way. They wanted mom and pop shops. There's a lot of commercial on Watt Road that people don't realize right now is residential. We did the same thing on McPhee. McPhee used to have a little commercial node in the plan for the circle at the McPhee Road McPhee Park entrance, and they wanted none of it. Like, take that out. We do not want any of that. We don't want any commercial on this. We took it out. We reshaped that whole plan based on what that input was. Same thing with Bourne Road. The community's fingerprints are all over our future land use map. I think when we go into the comprehensive land use plan planning, the only thing we really need to look at are the goals, because the goals that were there in 2012 are no longer our goals. I think that the community coming in is going to give us a lot of input on that. So I was proud of that one. Oh, there was another one, the stormwater. We went to a TML in 2017. And I went into one of the breakout sessions, and there was someone was talking about how they had to let go of their charter and go back into the county because they had such a massive stormwater infrastructure project. They put it to the citizens, we need to raise taxes. The citizens didn't want to raise taxes, so they had to basically surrender their charter and fold into the county to get this stormwater project done. And I came back and I thought, I don't remember ever talking about stormwater anywhere. We don't have a plan. I haven't seen anything in our CIP. Why aren't we talking about this? And so I led the effort. Everyone else is gung-ho on McPhee Park, and I'm like, let's do stormwater. And I managed to get I got a little upset at one meeting, but they managed to finally put enough money into it. And of course, 2 years later, we had that flooding rain in 2019. Took out a stormwater pipe in Sedgefield. Thank God they had the two entrances because it collapsed the road, and we had a collapse on Red Mill. So we're on top of that now. We're analyzing. Of course, we just had the one. I don't know what happened there, but they're replacing that with concrete, and that's the goal. We're either going to you go in and you kind of rehab them with the inner coat, or you just go in and take it all out. We have a planned one in Village Green for this summer. I don't know if you guys have started that yet, but I'd say those were my top three.
Since 2024, I came into I would say the back end of the debate and the discussion when it came to the pickleball court design, and then moving it from McPhee over to Bob Leonard, and I got to look at that because we spent a lot of time with the Parks and Athletic Committee and a lot of citizen input, obviously from the people there around McPhee and the pickleball community and just the citizens in general. And I think we have. I was fortunate enough to be able to get to the majority of that discussion, but get in there, and I think we've created a state-of-the-art, great facility there at Bob Leonard for pickleball. We had a couple tournaments the last couple weekends, and earlier in the summer, and then I had a couple citizen-type projects that came to me, and they asked me about. One of them was they had been back to the Planning Commission, I believe, a few times, and they reached out. They wanted to build a second home on their property, and the way the ordinance and the way everything was written at the time, they were going to have to. The current home was not connected to the sewer system, and the way everything was written, they were going to have to connect the current home to the sewer system. It was going to be a pretty big, drastic expense. And they worked with the Planning Commission, they worked with Mark Shipley's office, and the staff came to us and said, guys, we're okay with this if you guys are. And what we were able to do was allow them to build that second home and we kind of put it into a new zoning ordinance, where if you build a second, if your property's big enough and you want to build a second residence, it does not affect the utilities and so on of the first residence. And I think they were very, very happy about that, because they were allowed to do the project they wanted to without having to, outlay a lot of expense for that. And then the other one is something that's in our current CIP right now, and that is a traffic control signal for St. John Newman and Berkeley Park. People came to me almost immediately. I know they had been talking to Scott about that for a few years before I got there, and they came to me, and I had one real quick discussion and said, Scott, where are you with that? And he said, we've been back and forth. They've tried police officers to direct traffic and so on, and so I kind of went and had a meeting there at the school with them and so on, and we were able to work on it. We got a new traffic study done, and it warranted a traffic control device there. So you'll see that. I believe that starts right around the 1st of next year.
We have time really for one more question, and Mr. Wanamaker's had his hand up for quite a while, so we'll let you ask the last question.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both of you for making a choice of our next mayor rather difficult. I think that we're very blessed to have two really good, solid people with good experience, and I think you both have a good sense of what this town wants and what we want to keep and what we want to change, and of course we're going to keep those lines going. My question goes to law enforcement, and if you could describe what you think is strong about law enforcement presently, what you think needs to change, what would make law enforcement more effective in our community, does it need to be more effective? What would the citizen involvement be in that analysis?
I think we're probably both going to agree on this, but and certainly you have more experience with it than I.
You go first, then.
I had a chance to sit down with you. We don't have a lot of coverage, but we're not in the minority. This whole area doesn't have a lot of coverage. It seems that with our new sheriff coming in, he's going to change that up. He is looking to get a lot more folks out on the streets, a lot more patrols. That was a nice conversation to have with him. He wants to be more proactive. No speeding is an issue. I mean, I know sheriff's office is dealing with a lot of stuff, but that's quality of life and, quite frankly, public safety at this point. Speeding has become such an issue. We're seeing the abuse of it in school zones is really, we need to get that one nailed down, because that just can't keep on going on. But it is a quality of life issue, having people speeding by. We have sidewalks and trails everywhere. The safety is a big concern of pedestrians, because you get hit with a car going over 35, and you're likely not surviving that. So, and we certainly know all the speeding issues we have. I think that's our biggest issue that we're seeing. We have some property issues that we need to make sure that it's kind of like the broken window, but we need to get on top of that, because we don't need that reputation that, hey, there's no police force around here, it's easy pickings to go steal from people in the town of Farragut. We need some coverage to take care of that. He said, so when I spoke to him, he said, give me some time. Get this up and going, get the department moving in the direction I want to get it moving in. And he's left the door open if we want to negotiate for more coverage that we're willing to pay for. But even if he's willing to do that, he's not going to have the capability of doing that right off the bat. So I think it's going to be a little wait and see for a little bit, and then we get to kind of engage once he's settled in. That's my impression anyway.
Yeah, I've known Brett for about 16, 17 years, and one of the first conversations I had with him after the primary in May, he said, ironically, you go down to the sheriff's department, he said, we have more cars that don't say Knox County Sheriff on them than they have cars that do. He said, that's the first thing he's going to change. And like Louise said, his big promise is he's going to get people out of offices, out of these units that they're working, and he wants them on the street. He wants visibility. They have a traffic unit. I think he really wants to try to expand that a little bit. They use a lot of motorcycles for their traffic unit in good weather, so he's gonna try to get more of that to help with the speeding issues and, with just the general traffic issues. This area here is designated with 2 patrol beats. So they're on a perfect day when everybody shows up to work and nobody's called in sick and they don't have any issues, there's 2 officers designated to this patrol beat, because there's 2 separate beats. But you always get, somebody calls in sick, or something happens, or some other part of the county, you get something major, well, they have to call for backup. Your backup has to come from somewhere else. So I think a lot of times when people don't see officers here driving the streets, they think we don't have any police coverage. It's here, it's just very sporadic, unfortunately. It's a very large area, and if you've got 2 cars driving around, I mean, we could put a big giant cloud nose on somebody's car, drive around and ask everybody how often did they see it. They'd probably be slim to none, even our personal car. So Brett, he is open to that discussion. Mayor Williams and I, a long time ago, had that discussion. I grew up in Southern California with my dad with General Motors in Orange County, and the town of Mission Viejo is very similar to Farragut. They contracted their police through the Orange County Sheriff's Department. So they paid a fee every year for additional coverage. And Mayor Williams and I talked about that last fall even, that there's some possibilities there, there's some ideas there to help alleviate some of the issues we have. But my gut feeling is I don't think we're gonna have to go that route. That'd be a pretty big expense for the town of Farragut. And I don't think we're gonna have to go that route, because I think we have a very proactive sheriff that's gonna come in. He's gonna look at his budget, he's gonna look at his staffing and find out, hey, where can I move people? Let's get these people trained if they're not trained, get them out on the road and get them working in the communities. And I think it's gonna be a lot more community-based police.
All right, let's give both of them a big round of applause.